for listening to episode 231 of Mitolife Radio. I'm your host, Matt Blackburn, and today I'm excited to interview Vincent Usache of MicroPhyt. I found Vincent's company at a health conference that I was attending, and I was very impressed with their product ingredient called brainphyt, which is a microalgae extract from the species Phaeodactylum tricornutum. So they grow this algae in France and study its benefits for specifically the brain. And it's actually been demonstrated in 7 preclinical trials to improve cognitive performance, improve short and long-term memory, enhance learning, and support the reduction of oxidative stress in the brain. You could call it a whole food supplement because even though it's an extract, it contains everything in the algae. So you're getting antioxidants, B vitamins, minerals such as magnesium, potassium, calcium, iron. There's essential amino acids in there. There's phycoprostanes. There's a little bit of omega-3s, not a huge amount. And then there's some xanthophylls, and this one specifically called fucoxanthin. And that's what we talk about a lot in this show, which is a antioxidant that is in this microalgae. And if you look up the research that's been done on fucoxanthin alone, just one component of this microalgae, it's pretty incredible. So in the context of my CLF protocol, calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis, Vincent goes into the potential application of fucoxanthin for all 3 of those things. So this was actually the first in-person interview at my new house in California. So that was a lot of fun. And this show is actually timed right in line with the release of my new product called Encephalon from Mitolife. So I combine this ingredient, this microalgae extract, with 2 other ingredients. So I'll talk about that at the end of the show. Here is Vincent Usache. All right, we're here with Vincent Usache for the first in-studio live interview. Welcome.
Hey, Matt. Nice to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. So I'm actually utilizing one of your ingredients. I met you guys at a health conference that I attended, and you were my favorite. I just loved what you guys were doing and creating, and it was just so intriguing to learn about. So the show's going to be kind of diving into this particular species of microalgae. But before we get into that, how did you get into this whole field?
Thank you for that, Matt, first. And I'm Vincent. I'm coming from France. And the reason why we have been so interested in microalgae and personally is because since actually the start of my career, I have seen a huge potential in these plants, unicellular plants that we call microalgae for different reasons, and I think we will come back to that later. Actually, this is a amazing organism on which we can extract bioactives that have a lot of benefits for humankind. And that was the idea of MicroPhyt. Actually, it was to be able to give access to the amazing diversity of bioactives that are present in microalgae. And this is why we started the company back in 2007. And that we have started from then developing those unique bioactive ingredients that you have seen at the show.
That's awesome. Were you interested in microalgae in university? Like before you started the company, were you looking into it?
Yeah, actually, this was my first trainee. I started as a marine biologist, and I did a first internship in a research lab working on microalgae. So that was my first step in that world, I would say. But after that, I used to work in different companies, multinational companies, and working on different kind of ingredients made from different organisms like a yeast, bacteria, for instance. But when I met the founders of the company, MicroPhyt, for me, it was clear that those bugs, those microalgae had a lot of advantages, several advantages. And for me, it was really important to give access to that diversity. So this is why I joined the company back in 2013. And we decided to grow the business, developing our technology and developing the ingredients that we are making out of this technology. And I will show you that later.
That's awesome. Yeah, so the topic of microalgae, there's a lot of different species, right? Is it over 80,000? How many?
Yeah, actually, we don't really know, actually. It's a huge number. Fact is that microalgae are plants first, so they are able to convert the energy from light into chemical energy and transform that into biomass, producing oxygen through the photosynthesis reaction. So that's a reaction which is at the basis of everything, basically, because the atmosphere is rich of oxygen today thanks to microalgae that have started the process 3.5 billion years ago. And yeah, so that's the key reaction. The key biological reaction is photosynthetic. So those organisms are able to do that, producing oxygen, producing biomass by using carbon dioxide, and light. So that's the starting point. And what we know is that those microorganisms, those unicellular plants, are living basically everywhere, on the sea, of course, on the oceans, on the lakes, on the rivers, but also on Earth, on different systems. And you can even find some microalgae in deserts. So a lot of different kind of ecosystems. So that's really the key. Microalgae are everywhere at the origin of a lot of things on Earth, and you can find those species in different environments. So there are actually hundreds of thousands of species, possibly some millions in these different environments. But what we know and what we can have access to is around 30,000 that we can source from different strain collection everywhere in the world. So here in the US, for instance, there are some very important strain collection with which we are collaborating to have access to those strains as a starting point of our production system.
That's pretty incredible that they can be found in deserts. That kind of reminds me of like fungal mushroom spores and how resilient they are. And I remember reading about how they can survive in the vacuum of space. Are microalgae pretty similar to that as far as being that hardy?
Yeah, I think the main difference with mushroom would be that they are able of doing this photosynthetic reaction. So that will be the key. And yeah, like any unicellular organism, the cell itself will have to basically adapt itself to any change in its environment. And so for that, it will produce and it will create bioactives that will play the role of organs in more complex organisms. So it's really important and interesting to understand that because microalgae are living in so many diverse environments, they have so diverse bioactives to answer those changes, those environmental changes that make them extremely adaptable to their environment. So that's really key in what we want to achieve, because indeed, with our research, we are then able and capable of developing bioactives that making some sense for biological activity.
Wow. And they're kind of the base of the food chain, right? Because a lot of the fish that we get our nutrients from, they eat the microalgae, right?
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's so that's a unicellular organism, so basically microscopic. So you cannot find that, you cannot see them on the naked eye, but they are everywhere, as I said, and they are accounting for only 2% of the biomass on Earth. So 2% of the biomass on Earth is made by microalgae, but you have to think that they are consuming 30% of the CO2 and producing 40% of the dioxygen that we have in the atmosphere. So they are contributing a lot of on Earth actually, but they are actually invisible to the naked eye. So that's I think for me it's a really interesting. And yes, indeed, they are consumed by the zooplankton, then by small fishes, then by the bigger fishes, and so on. So ultimately, you can find bioactive produced by the microalgae in the entire food chain.
Wow. Yeah, I think they all look so cool under the microscope. Like they look like all different shapes and colors, right?
Yeah, that's fascinating. If you have the chance to look at some of those species, you will see a lot of different feature, colors, some of spikes, some of flagellas, some of a lot of different type of structure, some of silica around the cell wall. So a lot of different bioactives that you can identify, can extract naturally from those biomasses.
And so the specific type of microalgae that you use in BrainPhyt, which species is that?
Oh, the species is called Phaeodactylum tricornutum. That's a diatom, which is a specific microalgae. And the reason why we have chosen this microalgae among a dozen of different candidates was the fact that she was extremely interesting in the bioactive and the fucoxanthin specifically that it was producing. So we have started to work on the different microalgae able to produce fucoxanthin, and Phaeodactylum for us was really a very good candidate. It grows relatively fast and it works well.
And yeah, and it has a xanthophyll, is that correct? That's the
xanthophyll is actually the family name of the fucoxanthin, and the fucoxanthin is a pigment. So in nature, the fucoxanthin help the photosystem, meaning help the chlorophyll to capture the light at a different wavelength. And so it's what we call a secondary pigment. So as you may know, in the chloroplast of the microalgae or of the plants in general, you have the chlorophyll, which is at the center of it, and different pigments around the chlorophyll to help the chlorophyll to access different kind of wavelengths of the light. And so the fucoxanthin is a specific one with a very unique chemical structure that helps chlorophyll in this diatom that we call Phaeodactylum tricornutum. So the fucoxanthin itself is really the key bioactive in BrainPhyt, in the ingredient that we have developed. And for some reason, specifically the fact that it has some unique chemical structure, notably one that we called the monoepoxide function, and the second one we called alenic bond. And those two types of structure are relatively unique. Among the xanthophyll, there is only, which is a family of, I would say, 600-700 of different pigments. But among this family, only a few dozen are able to produce such chemical structure, the alenic bond and the monoepoxide function. And altogether, they will deliver. So that's a unique feature for the fucoxanthin, and that will deliver specific function. I have to add as well that the fucoxanthin is only present in the marine world. So you cannot really, you don't find that on Earth. You find fucoxanthin in the brown seaweed and on microalgae as well. And in general, in brown seaweed, you don't find a lot of fucoxanthin. It's relatively low concentration. While in this microalgae, specifically Phaeodactylum tricornutum, So there's high amount of fucoxanthin, and the way we are producing it at MicroPhyt help us to making the most out of it.
Wow. And which wavelengths of light makes this algae grow? Is it blue, ultraviolet, and red, or?
Actually, what we call it's like a specific white, a warm white, which is a mix of red and white. It's relatively, I would say, relatively not so rare. It's relatively frequent to have this kind of wavelength for microalgae. But what is interesting to know is that fucoxanthin develops specifically when the intensity is relatively low. And so in nature, it will help microalgae to survive and to develop in an environment with a very low light intensity. So that's really its function, to capture this kind of photons that are at wavelengths that are relatively low intensity.
Is that like a stress response? Because I know before we recorded, we were talking about astaxanthin and how that's actually a green algae that when it's stressed, it turns red. Is the low intensity of light, is that a stressor to this algae? Or
why you could see that this way, but fucoxanthin is not a reserve molecule like astaxanthin. So it's really part of the photosystem. But it's true that you can play on the concentration of fucoxanthin in the cell by adapting the condition of light to the culture. So this is why at MicroPhyt we have been implementing this production method in order to making sure that we were making, let's say, the best productivity of fucoxanthin. So maybe I can give you a few words about the way we're producing that microalgae. Initially, when we started the company, we had worked on a system called a photobioreactor, which is a controlled system in which we are mixing in a very controlled way the culture media, the water, the microalgae, and of course we are applying light and light conditions, specific light condition to the culture, and controlling the culture every day. So that's photobioreactor is a system that we have developed since 2009 internally, and that we have patented, and that now is operated in the south part of France in a unique platform in which we are growing all of the microalgae that are produced by MicroPhyt. So that's today a production capacity of more than 250 cubic meter. We started, we had only 5 or 10 cubic meter. So now it's growing relatively fast. But yes, indeed, we have a specific units, so specific photobioreactors in which we are producing all those microalgae. And when we are producing brainphyt, we are making sure that we are making a production campaign for Phaeodactylum tricornutum that is produced all along the year. And then we are harvesting this microalgae, and then we continue with the next step of the process. You can go on our website, you can check out, and you will see the photobioreactor and some videos of it. Is pretty cool.
How long does it take to grow?
From the lab scale, so when we source the strain, so again, we are working with some strain collection that are providing us some initial material. So that's when we do research on new strain. And at some point, we are also developing our own strain, because at some point, of course, the microalgae evolves, start to be adapted to our production environment. So change is a genotype, is genes, to be really adapted to our system. So at some point, this is really our strain. This is a MicroPhyt strain, I would say, of Phaeodactylum tricornutum. So then the strain is conserved in a very controlled way. We have the ability to store it at MicroPhyt, and we store it as well in a third-party lab, so that we are making sure that we have always the same master cell bank, I would say. So from the lab, when we start the production system, it will last, I would say, few weeks, 3, 4, 5 weeks maybe, to go to the industrial scale photobioreactor. Each photobioreactor, industrial scale photobioreactor, is 5 cubic meter each. So from few milliliters to 5 cubic meter, it will take 3, 4, 5 weeks, something like that. And then as soon as it's in the industrial photobioreactor, we will start to do a continuous production of the Phaeodactylum, meaning that every week we will harvest part of the volume of the photobioreactor, and we will maintain the rest of the culture in the system so that it will continue to grow and to multiply itself. So microalgae is actually is kind of stem cell. So if you put it in a good condition, in the right condition, it will continue to multiply and to grow indefinitely. And so for us, it's just a matter of maintaining the right concentration of cells in the culture media to make sure that the conditions are appropriate for the growth of the microalgae of Phaeodactylum. And then, possibly we can maintain the culture for months and months into the same system. So with, of course, progressive harvest.
What intrigued me about your product was the research on brain function and short and long-term memory improvements. And that's actually what caused you guys to name the company or the product BrainPhyt, right? Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about the effects on the brain?
Yeah, sure. So we knew that in this microalgae Phaeodactylum tricornutum, there was some very interesting bioactive. So we mentioned the fucoxanthin, which is a pigment, but there are some others like sterol, like omega-3 fatty acid, like phycoprostein as well. So a lot of different extracts, different bioactive can be extracted from this microalgae. So this is what we do. We develop of course, as you have understood, the production of the biomass, we harvest it, and then we produce the extract on our site, on the same site in the south of France, in Montpellier. So when we get the extract, of course, our initial idea was to test this extract on different biological benefits. And we knew that because the fucoxanthin and some other components around it are extremely important in terms of antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, it was an interesting bet to test this extract on cognitive function. So we use some, initially we have been working with some animal studies. We had a partner in Montpellier, in the south of France, a university partner with which we worked, and we developed 7 different preclinical studies on which we demonstrated significant benefits of this extract on different cognitive functions, like you say, the short-term memory, the learning memory, different type of benefits on cognitive health.
Yeah, that's incredible. And there's a study on fucoxanthin as a potent NRF2 activator. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, that's actually one of the key metabolic pathway, because fucoxanthin is a direct and indirect antioxidant. We were talking about the chemical structure of fucoxanthin earlier on, and there is a specific system, allelic bond specifically, that delivers specific benefits, and some of them are indirect antioxidant properties. This is extremely fundamental in our ability to fight against specifically lipid peroxidation. So fucoxanthin activates the natural defense mechanism against the oxidative stress. And specifically, it will free a protein that we call NRF2, which is a transcription factor, from the grip of another protein called KEAP1. So the fact that NRF2 is freed by the fucoxanthin will trigger a lot of different production of other proteins through the activation of genes. And those new protein molecules will allow the cells to return to the optimal redox balance. So that's really key. So not only the fucoxanthin will help as a direct antioxidant, fighting against the ROS, but also will have this indirect effect, freeing this molecule and this protein NRF2 and triggering the rest of the pathway. So that's really interesting.
Wow. Yeah, we were talking about how I've before we recorded that I often hear people with mold illness that moved out of a moldy house. They want to work on their NRF2 pathway to come back to health, and so that could be really helpful.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah, I think that's really probably one of the uniqueness of this BrainPhyt ingredient, having this molecule in this specific form also, because important to mention that in nature, in the microalgae Phaeodactylum, the fucoxanthin is in a trans form. There's a different isomer form of molecule. You have the cis and trans fucoxanthin forms, and in nature, the trans fucoxanthin is much more abundant and also much more antioxidant. So the antioxidant activity of the trans form is clearly superior to the cis form. What we have developed at MicroPhyt is this ability to make an extract maintaining this abundance of the trans fucoxanthin. That's really important because in general, when you are doing an extract from microalgae, you will have possibly the high temperature, light exposure that will decrease the trans form and then make the product less effective.
Yeah, I often hear that talked about in terms of like vitamin K2 and a bunch of other nutrients. So it's really interesting. So Vincent, I want to start diving into fucoxanthin's effects on calcification. You kind of mentioned briefly lipid peroxidation and fibrosis. And there's some interesting research. I guess we could start on lipid peroxidation. Did you have anything more to say on that one?
Oh yeah, sure. That's really it's a key benefit of fucoxanthin. You know that of course the exogenous stresses and the cellular respiration of the mitochondria will produce some reactive oxygen species, the different ROS that we know. And part of those ROS, of course, it's important to have some level of ROS in the cell. That's clearly important so that we maintain our body in kind of alertness. It's important. But of course, if you have a level of ROS which is too high, it will create some protein oxidation and specifically lipid peroxidation. And you know that the brain is composed essentially of lipids. And so maintaining a good level or low level of peroxidation of the lipids is important to reduce cellular aging and to reduce I would say to maintain the good functioning of the brain. So that's really the key idea behind BrainPhyt. So the idea here, again, going back to the mechanism of action of fucoxanthin, we have shown that the lipids peroxidation was significantly reduced in animal studies by using BrainPhyt ingredients, even if the animals that were going through the study were challenged by a very high intensive oxidative stress. So that's an illustration and a demonstration of the two key mode of action I was mentioning. The direct one, so a direct interaction with the ROS, the reducing the concentration of the ROS in the cell, and the second one, which is the indirect mode of action, which is related to the NRF2 pathway.
Wow. Yeah, I could see a lot of applications for people with this, like for travel. Flying in airplanes is a lot of oxidative stress, which kind of can cause a lot of lipid peroxidation in the brain, which then contributes to a lot of different brain diseases, right? And I was actually thinking about yesterday, kind of meditating on this call, that the brain is arguably like the most important part of the body, because when we sleep, our brain sends down signals to heal the rest of the body. So it's kind of like the control center, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a good image. The control center of the body, and yes, for sure, you're right. It's a good application that you are mentioning, and more globally, I would say that that cognitive health is extremely important overall. Not only for the senior people, because of course, when everyone is becoming more and more aged, the brain function will start to slow down a little bit. The connection will be slower, and that's probably due to the fact that the cellular mechanisms are less effective, are getting more and more less effective, I would say. So making a good system working longer and in a better way, I would say, is important, and was the key of BrainPhyt ingredients. So we have actually 2 clinical studies running right now to show and demonstrate that in addition of those animal studies, BrainPhyt will help preventing the cognitive decline related to aging. So that's something that is ongoing right now. And another type of benefits that you can think of is the more global cognitive health or cognitive performance, because for younger demographics, professionals, students, gamers, or any kind of people, actually anyone that has some stress in his life and that wants to maintain a focus and alertness and concentration, we know that BrainPhyt can help. And for that, we have just released a publication with one of our ingredients, which is a combination of BrainPhyt and natural guarana. And the study has been done with the Texas A&M University, recently published. If you have some interest in that, it's extremely fascinating to see how the product helps this population to maintain and to boost the cognitive performance.
Wow. And it actually increases autophagy in cells. Is that right?
Yes, I think there is a kind of a specific way of the fucoxanthin, which is related to the the reduction of the fibrosis. And we have seen that you have the lot of mode of action in addition of the 2 that are related to the ROS and the antioxidant properties. There is some recent data and scientific data that show that fucoxanthin reduces the expression of pre-fibrotic genes. It inhibits the action of some protein called SMAD3 in liver cells. So that's an important one. It will also reduce the production of extracellular matrix compound, the ECL, by activating a transcription factor called FOXO3 alpha. And this transcription factor will activate the production of an enzyme that will act also actively against ROS, which is the superoxide dismutase, manganese superoxide dismutase. So that's a lot of change, or a large chain of different reactions that are triggered by BrainPhyt in the cells. And yes, you're right. In addition of that, because all those pathways are activated, overall, the autophagy level is maintained in the cell, and that's important to remind. Yes.
Wow. Yeah, and all those different pathways you mentioned that ultimately result in the reduction of fibronectin and collagen production. Yes. And namely like the overproduction, because we think of collagen as good, and it is, but when you're producing too much of it, that's not good, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's really a question of balance, of course, as always. And this has been particularly studied in the field of kidney cells, in kidney. Yeah. It's really a lot of data have shown that. So the fucoxanthin really reduce or alleviate the oxidative stress through some specific transcription factor activation, like the one I was mentioning, the FOXO3 alpha, but also the sirtuin-1, for instance, and some others. And those transcription factors will inhibit induced renal fibrosis. So that's really something really interesting information.
Yeah, and there was also that study that fucoxanthin inhibits or attenuates lung fibrosis in vivo, right?
Yeah, that's really related to the profibrotic protein expression. It was demonstrated in vitro, but also in vivo. So yeah, that's another benefits of this kind of bioactive.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I think that combined with systemic enzymes, it's a really good idea to keep fibrosis down. And then calcification, it's been shown that fucoxanthin also reduces that, right?
Yeah. So there is less information on that, but it's I would say that it's more an indirect effect than a direct effect, like we can see on the fibrosis on the antioxidant properties. But what is clear now is that the recent studies have indeed shown that the fucoxanthin reduces calcification in vitro and in vivo on animal models, and specifically through a pathway that we call AKT related pathways, and so that's the effect of that fucoxanthin. So it down regulate those two pathway, the AKT and as a consequence, it will reduce the calcification related signals.
Yeah, it sounds like it has systemic effects throughout the body, but that's not the only ingredient in this microalgae extract. There's also all these other things in it, right? Omega-3s and prostanes.
Yes, indeed. Our idea when we started to work on brainphyt ingredients was to have an extract which was delivering a different synergistic bioactive. So yes, the fucoxanthin is one of the key molecules, but as you said, there are some omega-3 fatty acids as well, specifically EPA and DHA. And those two are at a level which are, in my view, extremely suitable with the biological benefit that we are looking for. So when you will use the recommended dosage of brainphyt, you will have something like between 30 to 50 milligrams per day of omega-3 fatty acid in the dose, the daily dose. So that's dose which works very well in combination with the fucoxanthin and the other bioactive that are in this microalgae extract. So yes, the dose is important, of course, and the molecules like omega-3 fatty acid are also extremely interesting to fight against the oxidative stress.
Yeah, and we were speaking about the dosage of omega-3s because I have a history of looking into this pretty deeply and questioning whether they're essential or not. And my perspective now is that they are helpful, but you can overdo them, and especially creating a vitamin E deficiency, create a lot of problems. So your perspective is quite interesting. You think the often recommended dose of omega-3s is too high, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I think when there was a lot of science on omega-3 fatty acid, really a lot, and very interesting stuff. In my view, it's really just one part of the puzzle. And so our idea with this synergistic extract was to deliver a kind of rich cocktail of different molecules that were able to trigger different pathways as we have discussed. So yeah, I think omega-3 fatty acid are extremely great, bioactive, but like you say, it's a question of program, duration and dose. So that's really key. I have to add that something interesting is that actually microalgae are the only living organism on Earth able to produce naturally omega-3 fatty acid. And so the one that you find in the fish oil are actually the one that has been produced initially by the microalgae, and so have been accumulated all along the food chain like we were discussing earlier. So it's interesting to know that those microalgae themselves naturally in the cell deliver the right amount, the right level of omega-3 fatty acid in their simple cell in order to fight and to be able to fight against the environmental changes and to adapt to the environment. So that's why I'm saying that's extremely important to have those omega-3 fatty acid. But I'm also saying that, yeah, it's great, but not just that.
And it's about 10% of BrainPhyt, right?
Yeah, that's 10%.
Okay. Can you speak a little bit on the other like bioactives in BrainPhyt, like the prostanes or?
Yeah, sure. The prostanes are actually quite an interesting one. So in this type of, so prostanes are actually derivative of omega-3 fatty acid. So that's transformed naturally by the microalgae cell into signaling molecules that will be able to inform the cell that something's going on in terms of inflammation. So what's interesting there is that because we have these molecules in the brainphyt ingredients, it will inform the cell that have inflammation level that are relatively which are above the normal level of inflammation, I would say, that there is something going on. And so this is really some communication molecules that are not having direct effect, but they will inform the cell that something's going on. Hence, the cell can prepare itself to have the transcription factor, for instance, ready to be activated by other molecules like fucoxanthin or sterol or omega-3 fatty acid. So the idea of having those phycoprostanes is to kind of put an alert system on the cell that needs to have it, of course.
Wow. And any other things in there that are cool?
Plenty of things are cool, but yeah, I would say the three main ones are those three: the fucoxanthin, omega-3 fatty acid, and phycoprostate. Yeah.
Is there chlorophyll in there, or?
Yeah, they're part of chlorophyll. Yes, it's because it's a relatively crude extract. So we are using the Phaeodactylum tricornutum cell as a wall. And then we are extracting through the extraction process that is using bio-based solvent like ethanol. We are extracting the bioactive, so there is some chlorophyll, fucoxanthin, some other carotenoids, sterols, vitamins, minerals, etc.
Wow. Do you know what sterols offhand, or a few of them are?
Yeah, actually, the sterol are quite interesting also because we know sterol for the cardiovascular benefits, but in nature, in microalgae, they are there to kind of having an action on the membranes of the cell. So they are helping the cells to have a good fluidity of the membranes, and implementing a good communication system between the external and internal of the organ. So that's nature-wide sterol, I would say, all the sterol are there and developed. So we didn't trust yet the specific benefit of sterols to its BrainPhyt, to a specific benefit. We know, of course, that there is out there and they are delivering the benefits of BrainPhyt, but that will be another part of the studies that we will launch in the future to better understand the role of sterol on different biological models. So it will be made from maybe BrainPhyt, but also maybe some other microalgae that we are developing right now, in which we have seen a very high concentration of unique sterol. So that's something that will. come up in the next few months and years.
Wow. Yeah, it's really exciting. Where else can we go with this? Was there anything else that you didn't cover? I guess we can talk about a few of the studies.
So yeah, as I said, we did the 7 preclinical studies prior to the clinical studies that we launched. So 7 preclinical studies were targeting the cognitive application. So what was important and why we did 7 is not because it was for us important to do a lot of different studies. It was really about the fact we wanted to adjust and fine-tune the program of application. That, like we said, with omega-3 fatty acid, the program of application is extremely interesting and it's actually a key criteria. So we did several studies to evaluate what would be the best program of use to deliver the best benefit on cognitive application. So what is the dose and what is the duration? So what we found is that using brainphyt at 220 milligrams per day on human in a liquid form deliver the best benefit on the long term. But you may also want to use higher dose at 440 milligrams, again, at an oily form for a shorter period of time, like 1 month, for instance. So this is what we have demonstrated through all those studies. And this was made in a combination of behavioral trials, so showing the effect on the cognitive parameters on mice and rats, but also we kind of back up this behavioral test with a plasma test showing that the level of anti-inflammatory compounds such as interleukin-6 or TNF-alpha were significantly reduced with brainphyt compared to the control group and compared to some other products that we benchmark.
Wow. Did the effects last after the study? Like the memory effects, did they keep that, or did it go away after a time? Or
actually, we don't know, to be clear, because it's something that in these specific studies on animals, what we do is that we are triggering cognitive impairment by using a very strong oxidant called degalactose. This degalactose is mimicking the effect of aging on the brain. And so it's like a kind of it's a process that starts at some point, but it's not kind of reverted at some point. It's always going more and more oxidative. So that's why it's interesting to see the benefit during the program, but didn't check afterward when we were stopping if the benefits were maintained. I would guess that yes, you get some benefits, and actually, because you are kind of delaying the effect of aging, for sure that's clear that you're kind of saving time.
Wow. And you guys are actually working on some human studies recently, right?
Yeah. So I was mentioning the one that we have published on with Texas A&M. We will have 2 other studies in the next months to be published as well on more senior people than the one that we've done with the Texas A&M study. So that will be studies available, I hope, before the end of the year. We'll get the data sooner, but the time it will be published should be around the end of this year.
Wow. Yeah, it's exciting. And I guess some people need to see that human research, but it often is more expensive and it takes more time, right, to do those studies than the animal study.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the duration generally is, even if we are adapting the program to last a few months, but the time you need to recruit the volunteers to do the protocols and to go through all the ethics committees. So it takes, of course, time, and that's totally normal and fair. Then, of course, you have the program itself, the vivo study, And then what is extremely long is the data collection and the data crunching, I would say, and the treatment of those data. So yeah, overall, even though if the study can last 3 or 6 months, it will take 1 year or even more to get from the start to the conclusion and to get the paper published.
Did you say that some dogs have benefited from taking BrainPhyt?
Yeah, I know some. Yeah, it's actually a fun story because we started at MicroPhyt a little bit coincidentally with one of our colleagues called Thibaut, some project on pets, and it works actually very well. So we developed with some customers some products for pet supplements using a BrainPhyt or the equivalent of BrainPhyt for dogs. And so that's an interesting area because indeed there is some also age-related cognitive decline in dogs, and so you can and you may want to prevent this age-related decline thanks to those kind of natural ingredients.
That's really cool. Yeah, I know a lot of people deal with elderly dogs and cats or whatever with dementia or Alzheimer's, and they get the same diseases that we do, right? So
yeah, I'm not a vet, so to be honest, I don't really know, but what we do is really we try to act before it's too late, I would say, and we don't. I mean, probably, and my gut feeling would say, if it's kind of dementia or the equivalent to dementia in human, I would say it's probably too late. So it's clearly important when the dog age to kind of help him with a perfect nutritional support. It can be related to the joint. Could be related joint with some specific supplements. But it has also, I guess, to be related to brain. And so delivering BrainPhyt ingredient for dogs is also interesting because, it will save time again.
Do you think BrainPhyt would have any effect on neurogenesis?
That's a good question. I think there are some publications that show that direct effect, but I guess it's on in vitro studies only. So I don't know if it has been confirmed on the vivo studies, but I would say that there is an effect on that. I don't know the mechanism to be honest, but I think that there is a possible direction.
That's pretty exciting. Yeah, because it's kind of scary to think about the point of no return, but maybe with the right combination of things, you could start to move the needle.
Yeah, that's the whole idea. The whole idea, and this is why it's at MicroPhyt we have decided to develop those different bioactives. So BrainPhyt is number one, as you have understood, but we are working on some others that will come in the next few months and years, and hopefully we'll be able to kind of deliver a wide range of unique bioactive ingredients that are safe, that are effective, and that are sustainably produced in France.
That's exciting. Yeah, you were sharing some of the topicals with me, and that's pretty cool, especially for myself that just moved down to a sunny area from a dark area, and much more ultraviolet light and just sunlight in general. So I've been more aware of wearing a wide-brimmed hat and taking vitamin C and E, which protect against UV-induced skin damage. But then there's these other things like BrainPhyt and just other microalgae, which can help with UV damage, right?
Yeah, that's clear, and that's really a very interesting benefits of working with microalgae. Is the fact that again, because they are single cell in a relatively harsh environment, they have to develop strategies to adapt this environment, and some of them are related to the intense UV they are receiving. when they are in the natural environment like ocean, lakes, and rivers. So what's interesting is to see this type of bioactives that are naturally produced by the microalgae and start to develop the product out of that. So recently, and if you want to stay on the fucoxanthin benefits, we have launched an ingredient called PhycoAge, which is an anti-aging ingredient, which is also using a low level of fucoxanthin compared to brainphyt, but on which we have demonstrated very strong benefits on the skin antioxidant potential. So specifically, you may know that when the skin cells are aging, they are producing advanced glycation ends product called AGEs, and those AGEs accumulate into the cells and make into the skin, and make the skin more, you can see visible sign of aging. So really here, the idea of using PhycoAge is to specifically prevent the protein of the cell of the skin from the alteration by glycation. So that's an important aspect again, and this is demonstrated into a clinical study that we have just completed at MicroPhyt with our ingredient PhycoAge, which has some fucoxanthin in it. So we showed that after 56 days of application of these topical products, the evolution of the advanced glycation ends product was significantly reduced with PhycoAge, 3 times more than the placebo, for instance, and significantly statistically significant. So that's a really interesting result. And also the evolution of the antioxidant effect was measured, and we have seen that it was 8 times more efficient than the placebo. So again, this is just an illustration of the fucoxanthin benefit on the cell of the skin. And you can actually draw from the microalgae large range of bioactives that will be applied against UV pollution, that will help to reduce sensitive skin issues, that will also restore the cell communication, etc. So there are a lot of different bioactive ingredients that we have launched recently using microalgae.
So if you take oral fucoxanthin long enough, would it get into the skin to infer UV benefits from taking it orally, do you think?
That's a great question. I think it's something that we will investigate. What we know is that when we are using fucoxanthin orally into the body, it will be transformed. And so first, to go from the gut to the plasma, it will be transformed into fucoxanthinol. And this is fucoxanthinol that will circulate in the body. And the fucoxanthin in the liver will be transformed into fucoxanthin A, which is a kind of derivative of fucoxanthin. And this is where it will be stored and will be reactivated if needed. So we don't know, to be clear yet, if there is a direct interaction between the fucoxanthin that you take orally and the cell and the skin cells. So we know that the fucoxanthin on the topical application has direct benefits on aging, clearly on the skin, but we don't know yet the link between the beauty from within the concept. So that's something that we should investigate in the future.
Yeah, you mentioned Wuhan, which everyone's familiar with now, and how they have a combination of UV and pollution, which kind of synergize together, right, to cause extreme oxidative stress in the skin.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something that we did in 2021, I guess. It was done in Wuhan, and the ingredients that we have been using is called Wavelengths. It's a mix of from red microalgae called Porphyridium crentum. So it's a different one from Phaeodactylum, tricornutum, that we were discussing about brainphyt. So the Porphyridium is as a basis of this Wavelengths ingredient, and it's composed of specifically two molecules. This is a exopolysaccharide, so kind of carbohydrates that the microalgae produce naturally, helps to maintain the right amount, the right environment for the cell itself. And the second one is phycoerythrin. Phycoerythrin is again another pigment from the photosystems, but this one is not a xanthophyll. Is a protein, a very unique protein, which is fluorescent, which make a very great pink color. So you should have a look at this extract. It's amazing to see that. And this extract renouvelance have been clinically validated and demonstrated in Wuhan to prevent the synergistic effect, I would say, or the effect of both pollution and UVs, and that, as you said, are in conjunction bringing even more problems to the skin.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I think the UV reacts to all the car exhaust and kind of makes it more toxic, right?
Yeah, that's that, and we showed that with very nice data also in vitro, where in vitro some cells are kind of polluted with some very high metals. Transition metal that are present in the unfortunately in the air, and that's made by the smoke of the cars and all this stuff. And interacting UV with those components make actually cocktails that are not really good for the health of the skin. So the idea of renouvelance is really to help that and prevent that to occur.
That's awesome. Well, Vincent, this was great. We covered a lot of ground, and this is pretty heavy in the science. So appreciate you sharing all the studies and all the deep research that's been done so far on BrainPhyt. It's kind of exciting for me to have more of an open source product where people know exactly where it's coming from. And I've been into algae for years. I was telling you, when I used to be raw vegan, I was taking all the different types of algae I could find as a supplement. Of course, chlorella and the common ones, astaxanthin and the cyanobacteria spirulina, right? But it's exciting that this field keeps expanding and more algae become available as their research. I think you mentioned you guys are working on 30 to 40 in the lab or something.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah. That's it, exactly that. We are trying to give access to this diversity because we think that, yes, you're right, there are some well-known microalgae, the chlorella, spirulina, and species alike. But actually, there is a huge number of different microalgae that we are just starting to explore right now. For us, it's really just the beginning. So yeah, that's our job at MicroPhyt to make that possible.
That's really exciting. Well, Vincent, thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Matt.
That is all for today's show. I think algae are so fascinating. Like I told Vincent, I was almost an algaetarian back in my vegan days. I was taking all the different strains of algae that I could possibly find. They're one source of nutrition that people often don't think about. They think about fermented bacterial products, the fungal products like medicinal mushrooms, reishi, cordyceps, etc. And then your animal products, your plant products, and every class has its own unique compounds and benefits. But the microalgae are really unique. Like I mentioned at the start of the show, that fucoxanthin antioxidant compound that Vincent was talking about, it's pretty incredible that in the preclinical trials, it was shown that BrainPhyt completely reduces the peroxidation of brain lipids despite intense oxidative stress for over 50 days. that's pretty incredible. I've been studying electromagnetic field radiation damage for several years. So artificial, man-made EMFs. And I think there's a lot of fear mongering that goes on with that subject. So I like to offer a lot of solutions. And we have a ton of solutions. My favorites being vitamin C, vitamin E, and magnesium, which help with various different aspects of EMF exposure. But there's also zinc, which has been shown to help prevent lipid peroxidation induced by EMFs. And there are a lot of studies proving that lipid peroxidation increases when rats are exposed to EMF fields. And to back up and clarify what lipid peroxidation is, if you aren't familiar, it is the process where cell membranes are destroyed with the oxidation of components of phospholipids in our cell membranes, which contain polyunsaturated fatty acids. So there's this chain reaction that occurs in the cellular membranes, which transform polyunsaturated fatty acids, PUFAs, into biologically active substances that cause significant damage, disturbance in membrane transport, structural changes, cell membrane fluidity, damage to protein receptors, change in the activity of cell membrane enzymes, and so much more. And this dovetails into the topic of lipofuscin, which is a part of my CLF protocol. One study I looked at recently looked at human retinal pigmented epithelial cells, which are basically cells in the retina that have a lot of mitochondria in them, and they're really susceptible to damage, specifically by lipid peroxidation. So the study showed that impairment of lysosomal degradation induced by lipid peroxidation resulted in not only increased lipofuscogenesis, which is increased accumulation of lipofuscin, but also in a significant reduction of autophagy activity in the retinal cells. So protecting against lipid peroxidation in various ways, I wouldn't just rely on this microalgae extract, but combining various different things. As I mentioned, zinc, vitamin C, and vitamin E are some of my favorites. And then magnesium helps with the calcium influx that is caused by EMFs. But the C, vitamin E, zinc, and this microalgae extract, and you're really protected against lipid peroxidation, especially if you're in a population dense area or you travel a lot and fly in these metal tubes that you're just getting radiated in. If you have the nutrient support, then you're protected and you don't have to worry about it. I still don't hold a cell phone to my head, or I don't keep it in my pocket unless it's in airplane mode. But other than that, I really don't worry about EMFs anymore. So I hope you enjoyed that show. This is my first, you could say, kind of open source product where I'm being very transparent about the main active ingredient in there, which is BrainPhyt. But I also mixed it with phosphatidylserine and Gingko biloba, which all of them have various effects. And there's a reason why I put them all in there and in those amounts. I've been taking this specific combination for several months now. And after going through a period of brain fog, what I think was caused by just burnout from going too fast, doing too much, putting too much on my plate, taking this has really helped to restore my brain function, my mental clarity, my creativity. My brain just feels better since taking this combination. And it could be the 1-2 combination of reducing cortisol and then all of the brain supporting, brain protecting nutrients that are present in the microalgae. because both phosphatidylserine and ginkgo biloba have been shown in clinical studies to actually reduce cortisol. And cortisol damages the brain's prefrontal cortex. It decreases the volume of several brain regions. It makes beta amyloid plaque more toxic. It promotes oxidative stress. And I really think the brain is the most important thing to protect because that's our supercomputer. And when we sleep, it's the brain that is sending down resonant frequencies to heal the rest of our body. So if we have chronically elevated cortisol, if we have constant lipid peroxidation because we're in a high EMF environment, that's really a recipe for neurodegeneration. So in lowering cortisol and then providing fucoxanthin, sterols, phycoprostanes, all these really powerful compounds present in this microalgae, I think it's a great combination to protect our brain. So as of this recording, that product is now live. You can find that at mitolife.co. If you go to shop and then the wellness tab, and it's the product called Encephalon. So if you want to dive into the studies and see the write-up that I did on it, you can head over to the Mitolife site. And I recommend picking up 2 bottles and go through 2 bottles in a month. So take 2 capsules twice a day or 4 capsules all at once. Of course, this is not medical advice. This is what I've been doing. And try that for 30 days. Go through 2 bottles like that and then stop and see how you feel. So keep an eye out on YouTube and social media for more information about Encephalon. Check out my website, matt-blackburn.com, to read about my CLF protocol and to see all of my recommended products. Through this week, my friend Brandon over at Blue Shield and Shen Blossom, he's running 4th of July sales on both websites, so you can save 18% on Blue Shield products as well as Shen Blossom products. Shen Blossom, use the code BottleRocket to save 18%, and it's the same discount code for Blue Shield. And I'm a huge fan of all of his products. The scalar emitters from Blue Shield are incredible. I don't leave house without the portable one, and I use a C1 cube here in the house. And then with the Shen Blossom products, I really love the quality of the herbs that they provide. It's really awesome stuff. I also want to give a shout out to my friend Charles over at Crucial 4. Haven't talked about his products in a while. And a friend recently texted me asking for my recommendation for vitamin D, my favorite vitamin D supplement. And if you're shocked because you've listened to my shows 2 years ago, then I would go back and listen to some of my recent shows where I talk a lot about context, and I've edited my CLF protocol to include context where you can get vitamin D toxicity, or you could also have vitamin D deficiency, especially with certain genetic SNPs that prevent you from making vitamin D from sunlight, which a lot of people have. So in that case, a supplement could be really beneficial. And the one from Crucial 4 is my favorite. It's called M Vita D3, and it's a DK combo. And he also puts aloe vera leaf in there, goji fruit extract, and shilajit. So if you want to try any of their products, the discount code Blackburn will work on your first order. Check out the Mitolife Academy. That's the private YouTube channel. I put up 2 videos a month. It's $15 a month. And you get a live Q&A the last day of every month, where I'll share my latest research, experiments, latest product supplements that I'm trying out. And that's a fun way to connect with the community. So that's all. I'll see you guys next Friday. Stay supercharged.